Hey guys, it's Ashley, and in today's video I am going to be talking about some recent 5-star reads that you should totally check out. If you've been watching my videos for the past couple of months, you may have noticed that I stopped giving out star ratings just because it started getting in my head a little bit. The rating system that I had going on was just a little off. I wanted to give things a bit lower rating and then I felt bad about it, so I just decided to just stop it altogether, and it's been wonderful. But I know some people really like having that, so I figure if out of the last couple of books that I have read over the past few months, I could give a 5-star rating to a few of them and recommend them to you, this little group that I have here would be those books. You may have already seen these books featured on my channel either in wrap-ups or in separate videos, but I want to just combine them all here in one you should totally check out these reads because they are amazing video. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have 3 fantasy books and 3 contemporary books here that I want to show you. It just so happens that they evened out in a very nice group here. The first of which is A Song of Wreaths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. This is a West African inspired fantasy following 2 lead characters named Katrina and Malik. Katrina is the princess of this city, kingdom, whatever you want to call it, and Malik is part of this tribe that has been oppressed for years and years and years. Malik is trying to enter the city, get a job, help his family migrate into the city, and Katrina is dealing with the grief of unexpectedly losing her mother and then having to handle this big competition celebration thing that happens every 50 years on her own. So their stories collide when Malik enters the competition and Katrina reveals that the winner of the competition will be given her hand in marriage at the very end, and there are a lot more things that unfold and a lot more backstory that is involved in this story, but you're just gonna have to read it to find out because it's so good. One of the main things that I loved about this book when I read it was the main characters. Malik is the softest, cutest boy ever, and I just want to give him a hug through 90% of this story. He is so sweet. I love him to death, and it's just the stuff that he manages to get himself into is wild. And Katrina is very hard-headed, but at the same time she's dealing with the grief of losing basically most of her family, and so she is just really torn between, wanting to show everybody what she's made of or just crumpling in on herself throughout the entire story. As I said, there's a lot of backstory and twists and turns that really make this book as good as it is, and I definitely think that this was a great 5-star fantasy read. If you want a good fantasy book to go into this fall, highly recommend picking this one up. So the next fantasy that I have on this list is one that I have talked about many times on this channel just because it's been my absolute favorite book of the year. And if you know what it is, you know what it is, and it is Scythe by Neal Shusterman, though I only have the second book in a physical copy, so I'm gonna hold it up here. This is the second book, but Scythe is the first book. I've made a book talk on it already. I featured it in many videos. I feel like when I find a favorite book, I just shout it from the rooftops in every single freaking video that I make, and this one is no exception. The first book in this series was so freaking good. Oh my god. I will leave my book talk to this linked down below. There is a good length non-spoilery section, so if you want to know things without being spoiled for the whole story, you can check it out there. But essentially this book is kind of like this utopian fantasy society where we've basically conquered death in itself. We can cure all diseases. If people die, we can bring them back. If people grow too old, they can regenerate into a younger age. It's like people can essentially live forever. Because of that, we need to control overpopulation and crowd control and things like that. So these scythes have been formed who get to pick and choose who dies and when they die and how they die. And so we follow in this story 2 young people, kids, I don't know, they're 16, 17, it's a YA book, Citra and Rowan, who are kind of taken as apprentices and taken under the wing of Scythe Faraday, who is the main scythe that we follow in this story, as they sort of compete to become the next scythe. It's a super interesting story. I won't go into too much detail because, as I mentioned, I do have a book talk on it, but it's so good, so good. And also, if you're an audiobook person, the audiobook for this story is phenomenal. The narrator, I absolutely loved him. He's great, and I want to get to this one so bad. I have other books that are kind of getting in my way, but hopefully soon this month I will be able to pick this one up and continue this journey. It's so freaking good. Read this book, please. And so the last fantasy story that I have on this list of books that you should totally read is Graceling by Kristen Kishore. So when I was picking books for this video, I was actually really torn as to whether I thought that this was like a real 5-star book or whether it was just like 4.5. But then I really thought about it and I really did enjoy this book. This was a great basic fantasy story. This book came out years and years ago, I think in like 2008. I've had this book on my TBR for a very long time because a lot of people would talk about it over the years because it's been out for so long, and I finally was able to get to it this year and it was just so good. I just really love a fantasy book, especially fantasies that are like this one, so it was in my mind 5 stars. This story, if you're unfamiliar with it, follows a girl named Katza who has a killing grace, which essentially in this world, a grace is any sort of supernatural ability you may have to be able to do something, like some specific ability better than other people. So there are people with cooking graces and dancing graces who maybe cook and dance better than everybody else. Katza, on the other hand, has what she thinks is a killing grace, meaning she's just really good at kicking people's asses. So the whole story starts when she is rescuing this old man from this prison in one of the other kingdoms, and then this prince shows up and it turns out that he's the prince's grandfather, and then she and the prince go on this quest to try to find out who took the grandfather and why and what they're plotting. Like I said, this is the kind of fantasy that I personally fall in love with and I really enjoy reading, so there was no doubt in my mind that I was not going to like this, if that makes sense. I had every belief in the world tucked away in my head that I was going to absolutely love it, and I was not wrong. And so the final 3 books that I have on this list, as I mentioned, are contemporary, the first of which is This Is My America by Kim Johnson, which this is an ARC with an unfinished cover, obviously, so the book is out, it has an actual cover, this is just the copy that I have at this point. This book I read in one sitting in like a full 6 hours, just sat in this chair right here and just read this from start to finish and cried at the end. It was such a good, powerful, emotional book, and I just loved it so freaking much. Essentially, we followed the main character, whose name is Tracy Beaumont, and her father was wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. He has about 275 days left until he is put to death because he is on death row, and so every day that he's been in prison, Tracy has written to this organization called Innocence X that essentially helps wrongfully accused Black men get out of prison. But then all hell breaks loose in Tracy's life when her brother is then convicted for a murder that he did not commit. And so things are kind of spiraling out of control. She's trying to save her father, she's trying to prove her brother innocent, and it's an absolutely wild ride with an amazing ending to it all. This is such an important book to have in the world right now, between the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the police brutality that we've been seeing, and so it literally just, it brought me to tears by the end of it to read and to know that this stuff still happens. But at least we are trying to bring light to it and trying to fix this broken system that we have. Definitely, if you're gonna pick up any of these books on this list, no matter how much I loved Scythe and is my favorite book of the year, definitely pick this one up. So book number 5 on this list is one of my faves, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. As I've mentioned on this channel before, everything Elizabeth Acevedo writes is pure masterpiece, and Clap When You Land is no exception. So this book follows 2 sisters, Camino and Yahara, one who lives in New York and one who lives in the Dominican Republic, and when their father dies in a plane crash traveling from one place to the other, they actually find out that the other exists, because up until this point when their father dies, neither actually knows that the other is alive and exists and they have a sister. This story is beautiful. I absolutely loved it. It nearly brought me to tears by the end of it. It was just so touching and was such a great picture that Elizabeth Acevedo wrote about grief and family and love and what it means to be connected to one another and that sort of thing. I don't mean to keep giving you books that will make you cry by the end of it, but honestly those are the best ones. The ones that really like touch you and really just like make you emotional and just fill you up with feelings. Those are the 5-star books for me. This headband is giving me a headache, but I'm gonna keep it on because it goes with my outfit. And so the last book that I have here on the list of contemporaries in this list is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I loved this book so much more than I thought that I would. That's like how I feel when I start trying to talk about this book. I'm just like super tongue-tied because I just loved it so much. So Felix Ever After is about this boy named Felix, clearly, who is black, queer, and transgender. His family, as in his father, who he lives with, doesn't really understand and is trying his best, but it's just kind of like missing the mark. And the only person that he has in his life that he can turn to is his best friend, Ezra. They go to this arts school, and one day when they both walk in the door, there are pictures all up around that somebody had put up of Felix pre-transition along with his dead name. And so in an effort to try to combat the feelings that he is feeling, that all of these things brought up, he is determined to find out who did this and why they did it. Along with like the plot that I just went into, there are so many more things that go into this story that just really like make your heart swell and sing. There are obviously some bad decisions that Felix makes in an effort to try to figure out who put up his dead name and pictures of him. But all in all, it's just a really touching story about a boy trying to get others to accept who he really is and to try to, you know, just find love and to prove to himself that he is capable of finding somebody else that will love him just as much as he wants to love himself. It also almost made me cry at the end. There's a theme here. Just accept it and move on. And so, everybody, those are all of the 5-star books that I've recently read. I think that you should definitely go out and you should definitely buy all of these, and you should definitely read them all. And then let me know what you think. And if you've already read some of them, let me know what you think in the comments. My favorite thing in the world is reading a book and not having any expectations going in and then just being completely wowed and floored and emotional coming out of it. It is one of the most wonderful things about reading and one of the things that I love about continuing to find new stories and read them and just fall in love. So that's why I made this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have a 5-star book that you would recommend to literally anybody, let me know down below. Give me that recommendation and I will do my best to try to read it. Maybe in a video. You'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, okay, I think that's going to be it. If you want to follow me on any of my socials, all my links and handles are in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye!